It's the pre-market ritual you never knew you needed. Get ready to gap and go with the KWEB Trading Institute.
Great, guys. Welcome to another episode of Gap&Go for the year. What's the best way to unpack it? Last week we've seen, sorry, not last week. This week we've seen relatively huge volatility, especially coming from news over the weekend about Deepseek resulting into cheaper AI. How much more efficient can it be? And obviously we've seen uh, the highlight of the highlight with regards to semiconductor, which is NVDA, saw a 17% drop that day. More importantly, even in terms of one of the themes regarding AI was energy. You've seen a lot of energy companies over those 2 days drop 30-40%, actually even more. One thing that I'd really like to highlight is, markets have been efficient. So despite that huge drop, it wasn't necessarily a correlation one event. So what do we mean by a correlation one event? Is that everything else drops. In fact, we've continued to see rotation happen in the markets the last few days. More importantly, despite the consolidation that's been happening in the US, things we might want to talk about for today. Is it finally time for China? KWEB's outperformance. Is it temporary? Is it just there? And then after, is it done? Things we're going to be talking about today. And last but not the least is the Philippine sell-off on absence of any volume. And hopefully Friday will give us a buying opportunity, especially with regards to the index outflows. All right, so maybe we can start with Jason. Jason, thoughts on dollar, inflation, maybe interest rates?
I think the Fed meeting starting tonight, no. But anyway, I think there are no surprises. I think even before this naman, we saw the markets adjusting to a more hawkish Fed. But I think one rate cut na lang expected for 2025. And I mean the markets moved already, right? Okay, so I think on the dollar, no, I think I'd be happy to be proven wrong. That sana parang range bound light on dollar, right? Like just like the playbook in 2016, diba? So when Trump won, there was an initial rally, but 2017 was actually a very weak dollar environment, which was bullish for the world, diba? But I don't know, parang to me, this is just a pause setting for another increase. Diba? So why? Kasi parang tingin ko the Fed is more hawkish versus other central banks for one. Second, parang tingin ko is that there are major uncertainties involved, especially with how the the new trade wars develop, diba? So you guys have to remember that the deficits of the US, diba, is a major source of dollars for everyone else, for the entire world, diba? So like if the US wants to reduce its deficit, diba, MAGA push of Donald Trump bring back the manufacturing home, and then for sure, magkaka-dollar squeeze talaga yung mundo. Right? So I guess let's just hope that, all these concerns that I'm seeing that doesn't play out. But that's what I'm seeing. Diba? So like for emerging markets, for me, it's still tough. Diba? For me, like what Edmund said, I think it's still the US. Diba? So that the news last week and Deepseek, I think they're just winners and losers, yun lang. But just have to be at the right side. So for me, that uncertainty is very typical of any new technology, diba? Somebody finds a breakthrough cheaper, faster, But I think at the end of the day, we're still in an AI arms race, diba?
Right? Anything else to add? I mean, are you seeing anything different underneath the surface? Has, price action been telling you anything differently?
Uh, One thing concerning is if you look at the S&P and even Nasdaq and Russell, the DeepSeek gap that happened days ago hasn't been closed yet. So technically, in terms of price action, if this is were to move further upwards. Yeah, that has to be closed. Yeah, that's one concerning thing. So at this point, at best, parang the pattern is, if you look at the pattern, the structure, the price structure now of the market, parang at best incomplete siya. For me, it's very incomplete. Even the MACD tells you parang incomplete. So what does that mean? From this point, risk reward wise, parang 50-50 chance na this breaks too higher, or 50% chance this one retests the support line. So structure wise, not very ideal. Risk reward wise, not as ideal, especially when multiples, parang from a very high multiple, could you still see significant reward from here? I'm not sure. But based on one positive thing lang, based on so far the earnings of one of the big boys last night, Meta, earnings are still in Mag 7. So if this were to move higher or close the Deepseek gap, probably will be still depending on the Mag 7 moves.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It was a big beat, I think, yesterday. Last night. I think top line was growing 21%, bottom line another 49, if I'm not mistaken. So I think, people get asked, is it the start of the downfall of the big tech in the US? And honestly, I thought it was an overreaction also that happened 3 days ago. And for me, it's plain and simple. I don't see any systemic risk also happening in the market today. Still not there yet. In fact, your banks, your financials are actually still sitting at new high territory. So meaning if there's any panic that should happen, well, you should see it in terms of earnings, and you should see it also in terms of leverage. And so far, I'm not seeing any concern happen on both ends. So, people can talk all they want. I'm sure US will do something about it. In fact, they did. They started to ban Deepseek, right? So for me, everything that happened was just an overreaction. I think it's more that it's just, I don't know what the correct word is. It's not froth because NVDA is what, 26, 27 times PE. But I would say it's overbought because this went up 10 times over the last year and a half to $3.5 trillion. So I mean, I do agree that a 17% drop or a 600 billion wipeout is like not just eye glaring, but it's actually the largest on record.
Yeah.
The drop of NVIDIA. But I guess the point being here is that it's very difficult to be very bearish and shorting when I see valuations at this level. Second is when I see movements in the S&P where things are still up and things are down, meaning it's not everything going down, right? And then three, interest rates are going up. They're actually not going down. And so what that means is relatively, I think the market is still risk off. So they're just playing defensive and focusing the ones with earnings. And you're correct, right? Earnings today is still in your NY5 in your Mag 7. That's the reason why for me they have been the ones outperforming and they will continue to outperform this year versus everyone else.
I think a big part of the surprise, I guess, of what happened this week was we've been talking about the past weeks about having no alternative but the US tech, right? And then suddenly you have this Deepseek na, much, at par or much better than what the US has. And suddenly China looks cheap, especially their technology. So parang it was surprising na. There's another alternative pala in terms of...
Bilis yung sa Alibaba, 8 times PE lang siya. O, diba? Parang ganun eh.
Oh, diba? 8 times PE. Tapos much, I mean, the performance is what? Parang it was bring to the front. So everyone Parang anecdotally, everyone's saying, oh, China, if you go to China, to people I know, after after going to China, when they go back home, nagkukwento, mas ahead than China. So, anecdotally, it's like that. What's that?
Yeah.
Cashless, whatever. EVs are much better.
Drones are better. They're
Oh, diba? Everything's better. But suddenly, so anecdotal, diba?
I think
Pero sa
parang,
market, it doesn't reflect.
I guess there's a parang realization that, that the race is closer than what people think it.
Oh, and I think
So,
everything was hidden because of the sanctions.
oh.
So,
Tapos I think also kasi parang with this I mean, hindi naman siya parang parami ng pera eh. I mean, like, it doesn't mean like if you throw like 500 billion and the competitor only has this much to spend, hindi sabihin lamang ka automatic eh.
especially
So it's really,
nowadays.
doing things, finding breakthroughs, di ba? Finding ways, di ba? To make it a lot cheaper, ganyan, di ba?
Yeah, all the best engineers are now coming from China, and diba, US companies couldn't hire them, makakasispice, diba?
Oh, di ba? So
So,
parang, I think there's another thing eh. Napanood ko sa All-In podcast. Like, if you look at the energy, the capacity build out in China, parang sobrang layo daw versus the US in the past 10 years. So parang if that trajectory continues, parang China will have multiples more energy capacity versus the US. Eh, di ba yung kailangan sa AI, di ba?
yeah, I think that's the mindset that was brought to the front by Deepseek, that China is really not way behind of US, but actually far ahead in terms of technology. And the only thing that's keeping the US technology companies
smart about everything.
seemingly ahead, di ba? Are the sanctions. Yung mga ano yan, mga wall, mga wall that's been built eh. Parang what happened the other day ba? Tama ba yan? Yung you can't use your DeepSeek sa mga Apple mo, di ba? You can't use your Gmail, whatever. Di ba? Yung mga ganyang walls eh.
Well, more importantly, I mean, I think we're getting off topic here, based on the equity market. But
Yeah.
I think more importantly here is that the good part about the sell-off that happened that day, I think it's exposing things that were just based on speculation and versus something that's actually proven to be cash flow positive or profitable, right? And I think that's actually very healthy. Parang okay, nawala na yung froth kahit pa paano. I mean, the some type of speculation that happened. So case in point, these guys not yet showing any terms of revenue and profitability yet, right? But at least parang nawala yung hype, right? And it's not just for them. I think uh, you're seeing it actually with all the other energy players, right? So yes, you could say it's an overreaction, but I think it's actually very healthy because these guys still went up from 70 to 190, right? Without anything there yet. They're just anticipating. So it's actually, for me, on that end, healthy. Para at least mawala yung fraud ng market. Diba? And then we'll start to realize, okay, then the winners and the losers after this consolidation will then start to appear. Which one are you going to be buying? Same case. I mean, you look at the semicons, I think pag tingin mo parang breakdown diba? But at the end of the day, most of these guys still have not changed their capex spending plans. Look at Meta last night. What's their plan to spend additional $60 billion this 2025, right? So on average, the big tech is going to be spending 60 to 90 billion dollars this year. Times 7, that's 700. That's close to 600 to 700 billion dollars just on the Max 7 in terms of tech spending. Right? That was the overall global US last year. So I think it's very difficult to just be bearish just because of one thing that happened 3 days ago.
Yeah. Well, actually, can be bullish naman eh, actually. I mean, cheaper means more people wanna build up the AI, ano, diba?
Interesting. Meta is interesting. It's at the forefront of the consumer space. It's like we're looking at Spotify and Netflix, you know. Parang subscription basis, raise their prices, very sticky. Probably if you can find 10 of those things, 10 kinds of services for the consumer, which is,
That
I
have
think,
that okay, gonna
oh, which is Meta is really close, very close to the consumer. Eh, di ba? You can find 10 of those things, okay. So,
okay. On the other hand, Xiaomi new high. So whatever we say about China being weak, Xiaomi, BYD still consolidating. You have the others trying to come back alive, despite being banned, I think, at the start of the year by US Navy. Close to closing the gap is Tencent. So I think, you know, and I guess the thesis really for China is despite whatever sanctions that is anticipated to happen, I guess is valuations cheap enough and is your tenure enough to compensate because it's very difficult to put money also to the debt market because you're only generating 1.6.5%, right? And for sure, earnings yield in the US is so much better than 1.6.5%. Anybody want to give thoughts about China or like, can this channel higher?
as you said, yeah, as you said, despite the negative narrative last year, China is still up for the year last year.
That is
So,
also true.
yeah. So I have to assume, so I can attribute that positive return last year probably not to growth or not to positive sentiment, but to probably mainly valuation. No? Probably mainly valuation because it's really not fantastic returns, but positive enough for them to overcome the negative narrative. So parang papunta pa lang dun sa hopefully positive sentiment. So if you're talking about bull markets are born in pessimism, this is a classic case, I think, with your government trying to pump up the market, you know, all those things.
I think, yeah, for me, as always, a major list ng geopolitics, diba? But I'm also aware that those are baka price in na. And like, even if there are some geopolitical risks, if it plays out like less severe than, what people expect, baka umakyat din eh.
Yes, case in point, what happened to yung expectations regarding tariffs, di ba? It's supposed to be bigger, but ngayon parang
Wala
medyo
pang
parang mild,
wala
eh, no?
announce eh. Solid eh, right?
Mhm.
Tariffs are so tricky. I think it was you said that, right? 22% of NVDA revenues were coming from Singapore.
Mhm.
We all know that's not Singapore, right? So
Yeah.
the problem with these things is that it's so tricky. How do you penalize or how do you circumvent these things, right?
Mhm.
That's the reason why even I think it was last night where they tried to sorry, they didn't try. They penalized also TSM if they start exporting elsewhere, right? So question is, how are you gonna do about it? Right? You rely so much on TSM, you penalize them, and they what? They go to
Yeah,
China.
it's like very tricky eh. Kasi everything's connected eh. I mean,
Diba? So these are just like two instances, one with the Singapore, two with TSM. And so for me, tariffs are very tricky all about. All I know is that uh, whoever is the cheapest producer and the most,
yeah.
highest technology advancement is the one who's going to win this game, right? Regardless of all the tariffs and all the things that are happening between. As in reality, it's just the consumer that's going to be paying for all the tariffs that have been happening, whether it's US or foreign consumer.
Yeah, for sure, the Chinese will make do with whatever they have locally. So so what's happening to 981, di ba? Your alternative to NVIDIA. So they've
No,
been
the alternative to TSM. Correct.
PSM pala. Yes. So, closing the gap between
Say
PSM and...
foundry, not the GPU,
So, they'll make do with what they have. So it's like they're very resilient, being able to survive within a world of sanctions. So that's why the Deepseek thing was a very, very
I think it's
surprising thing.
okay. Let's just go straight into the weakest market where I don't know what to say. When I look at the stock prices, it looks like there's a huge recession right now in the Philippines, right? Stocks falling 60% since, I don't know, last 4 months. Sorry, okay, we can say that Bloomberg is losing money. Sige, pass mo na tayo dyan. What about URC? Right? URC down 40% over the last, I don't know, 2 months. WLCON down 45% year to date. So
The only reason why this, I think, yung hula ko lang. My best guess is what else is being parang being exported but deflation from China. So parang marami na silang, tama ba? A lot of competing products coming from China against these issues.
I think because cost of living has gone up because of inflation. So the cost of everything has gone up. So people are just so let's say, for example, let's say like consumer spending in the Philippines 2 years ago was 1 trillion. Last year, 1 trillion pa rin. But the cost of goods have gone up, right? So people now are downgrading. So that's the reason why you're seeing a sell-off on all your consumer goods, URC, DNL, Monde, because you're seeing things being downgraded. Okay, instead of buying Dato Puti, right? You buy the exact copycat coming from Dali, right? And the Dali one is what? Half the price or 30-40% cheaper, right? Kaya lakas ng Dali sa mga provinces, right? So you can see that there's a downgrading people's lifestyles. And that's the reason why I think the consumer spending power maybe hasn't increased. Maybe it's just there or it's gone up a little. But the thing is, things have gone up so expensive that it's just rotating to cheaper goods. So I think that's exactly what's happening. That's the reason why you're seeing a sell-off happen on all your consumer stocks. But this one, I think property is really, really difficult situation. I think they really got hit. But you can see it also. When I look at Ali, it looks like a blue sky breakdown. I don't want to be pessimist, but all these guys look like it's gonna break down. So
Sabagay, I can buy a toolbox in in Shopee and Lazada.
Well, ako basta, ang alam ko, mortgage loan interest rate parang almost 10% right now.
no, I don't think so. I think you get a decent
So,
mortgage.
mataas.
Sorry,
Hello?
higher than last year, higher than the previous years. But I think 7.5% to 8% kaya pa ata today for mortgage. I think the point being here is that wala talagang pera. That nobody, like, especially the metro, right? Because a lot of things are being bought for investment and then you can't lease it out. That becomes the danger, especially with regards to condominium sitting in Parañaque and Pasay.
Yeah. Any positive thing? Any positive?
Honestly, I love it. This is the thing. I love everything that's happening today, right? People ask me about URC. But look, last time URC was at 60 pesos, analyst pa ako ng CUL. Diba? And this is the first time I'm seeing URC pay out 5.5% to 6% cash dividend, right? JGS is at 17 pesos. Last time I've seen JGS, college pa ako eh. Right? So what I'm saying is that I don't know. Let's say like, for example, let's say like JGS. I think I'm fairly positive because they had a 4-month shutdown with the Petrochem. And Petrochem brings 13 billion pesos a year, right? I've been hearing chismis also go about that it's going to be permanently shut down, which should be good, right? Because if it's permanently shut down, you save 13 billion pesos a year. You slap sige, 6 times PE multiple on that 13 billion. That's 90 billion in valuation. That's close to the market cap of JGS. So for me, like, I love what's happening today. Meaning, I get it that this sell-off is brutal, right? But like, I love exactly the things that are happening today. For me, this is the time to be putting
Parang you'll see a lot of capitulations in the Philippines.
yun lang. Tingin ko parang mababa pa yung mga iba. But I think that's like coming maybe in the rebalancing tomorrow, you might see opportunities. And for me, I'm buying tomorrow. So I'm just waiting for close for tomorrow to give us maybe better buying areas.
Are we the only country like this in Asia? Or similar to
I don't know. I think generally
Hindi naman.
we're weak. Don't get me wrong, but I think everyone has been weak.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's pretty much it. Things that are positive, maybe for the Philippines, is whatever they say, the 2-year actually has been collapsing much faster. So I think short-term rates, people are still expecting a rate cut, if I'm not mistaken, for this year. There might be a pause in the US, but looks like there's might be some rate cuts happening in other areas, especially if inflation continues to remain low. That's something we're all watching out for. So again, US, I think, is still our primary market, although we're seeing massive capitulation happen in the Philippines, and actually China start to rally. Is it temporary? Is it not? As long as there's no systemic risk, maybe we might see buying opportunity if there's irrational, and it looks like irrational is going to happen today or tomorrow in the Philippines. So guys, please keep your eyes wide open, and hopefully we can find areas for us to be buying. All right, last things, guys.
It's always darkest before the dawn.
All right, guys. Thanks again. Happy New Year, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.